and welcome back to a very ill edition of the Busby Way Podcast. I'm just going to put this out there before I even intro anything. If I start coughing and spluttering during this podcast, I apologise. I really am on my last legs at the minute, but we're powering through for the good of the Busby Way Podcast. So, Chris, I'm gonna when I ask you a question, I will cut to you, put the camera on you. I'm just putting that out there because if I need anything to do that during the thing, then that's fine. I can do that. Well, I've said how I am, Chris. How are you? How are you doing?
Yeah, I feel better than you probably do. In terms of a health perspective, football wise, I think obviously the next 20 or so minutes will explain why we're probably not feeling so positive.
Well, yeah, you hacked it there. Manchester United played Southampton at the weekend and they drew 1-1 yet again. Who would have guessed that? They went 1-0 up early in the first half and then 1-0 up at half time and then ended up conceding the second half and went to 1-1 as they have done in the previous 3 games against Middlesbrough and Burnley and now Southampton. Like I mentioned there, Chris, we were leading at half time and we were winning at the start of the game. Is this maybe something to worry about? Could this maybe become something where it becomes an added pressure for Ralph Rangnick's team? Or do you think it's maybe something that'll eventually fade away with time?
I think the fact that it's happened 3 games in a row now means it's a pattern rather than a coincidence. I think we're clearly getting into a situation where we're starting games quite well. I think all 3 of those games we've actually started well, creating chances, scoring 1 goal, but not scoring more, which we should be doing based on the quality and quantity of chances we're creating. And then, especially, there's a clear sort of correlation between the Burnley game and the Southampton game where we conceded within 3-4 minutes of the restart, and we're just not coming out for the second half with the same intensity. We're on the back foot straight away, concede a goal, and then we just can't get any control back in the game. And that's a worry for me because it's happened 3 times now. And, even going back to the start of Rangnick's tenure where we was winning games by the odd goal, we weren't looking like we were scoring loads of goals. And I think that's becoming a pattern that we're not as efficient in front of goal. And we've still got the thing where we do concede too many chances. I think genuinely, I think Southampton had more chances and probably we both had some really good chances. I think, we should have scored a couple more goals. I think the goalkeepers made 2 or 3 good saves. But likewise, De Gea's had to make some saves and they've gone really close on a couple of occasions. And I think they were better than us again. I think the other 2 games, I think we were the better team, but not clinical. This time, I think a point was probably actually on the balance of play best we could have hoped for because I think Southampton were better. So, yeah, I think there is a pattern developing that we are starting second halves poorly and we're not clinical in front of goal, which long term needs to change, especially when you look at March in particular, there's some horrendous fixtures in there based on our current performances. So, yeah, I do feel as though we're now getting to the point of it's more a pattern rather than a coincidence in terms of the fact that it's the same things week in, week out now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, it seems to be a thing where Manchester United start well, and they have done in these last 3 games, and they start off the front foot and they get the goal. And then from there, they have so many chances and they're not clinical with them, which is bizarre, saying that when you've got a striker like Ronaldo in your team and players like Sancho and Rashford in your team, although we know my opinion on Rashford being clinical, but we won't get into that right now. They seem to have play well in the first half, and then they take the foot off the gas because the belief goes and the confidence goes. Fans get on their back, and that causes them to crumble and eventually concede, and then be fight for a point towards the end, like you say. And for me, I mean, I'll ask you the question because United have had, I think it's 64 shots in the last 2 games or last 3 games and only scored 3 goals. Now, for me, if you can get the clinical, get to become more clinical, them shots were then converted, and it won't be long, I think, before Manchester United blow away a team. I don't think that'll be my. We make many predictions on this podcast, and that is my next prediction. It won't be long before Manchester United blow away a team, because the amount of shots they're having, it only takes for them to be converted, and we're talking like these last 3 games. If we'd have, converted our chances, them 63 shots, obviously not all of them, but if we'd converted, some of those more of those 63 shots, we're having a different podcast here. We're saying, yeah, we've won comfortably against Southampton, we've won comfortably against Burnley, we've won comfortably against Middlesbrough. Probably 3 teams we should be winning against comfortably anyway, but we're having a completely different conversation. So I'll put the question to you then, Chris. In that light, in your opinion, do you think Rangnick's starting to get it together? Because there was a lot of criticisms when he came in, and he hasn't been there for long, because Ole obviously was criticised heavily for his tactics, and there seem to be more things coming in place now. Do you think Rangnick's slowly starting to get it together?
I think on that point of, we are creating the chances. I think it's always a good thing that you create chances. I think, I said it's a worry that we're not converting the chances, but I'd be more worried if we weren't creating chances. Really. So I think, we are seeing something in terms of we are creating the chances. But I still think there's a lot of things that we're still very much unclear on. I think, BBC's Match of the Day did a great bit of an analysis, just looking at the midfield and how easy it was for Southampton to get through that. Because I think those stats show that we are clearly good going forward in terms of creating the chances. And like you say, all he takes is, I think it probably just takes that second goal to go in, and we could go, like you say, and go and put 2, 3, 4, 5 past somebody. It's the sort of, it's out of possession where we're arguably, we're certainly no better, potentially worse, because there just still seems to be a disconnect between what the manager is wanting and what the players are doing. And I think that's the most evident in the midfield. So I'm getting to the point where I'm struggling to see how much different we are to under Ranić than we were under Ole. I think there's clearly a philosophy that Ranić is trying to get across, which is, I think, is the big difference. I still just don't think the players are buying into it, or just not able to compute what they've got to do, especially in those key midfield areas. I think McTominay was he's been the only one that I think has shown a willingness to win the ball back, for example. I think with the 2 wide players barely tracked back, and that just created overloads. We were, so many overloads from the fullbacks in that game. And this is a mid-table Southampton team who, I said last time, are a very good sides. I rate them a lot, the way they play. If that's we are still at a point where we play City and Liverpool in a few weeks' time, where we're not having wingers drop in and doing the legwork, running back, the midfield keeping with runners around them. It's going to be similar to how it was for them 2 games under Ole, mainly because the big issue is still that midfield and how easy it is to get from a team defending to attacking us. I don't think the issue is going the other way for us, even though I did say we're not converting the chances, which ultimately is why we've not won these games. But there is still an inherent problem where we are too easy to get out. We're too easy to play against. And that's the bit I am most concerned about still.
Sorry about that, Chris. I think I lost connection there towards the end of what you were saying. I don't know if I've got it back now. It was just lagging out, and then I came back, and you were just sat there. So I'm assuming I think I lost connection there. But no, I mean, from what I heard, I agree. I am struggling to see that difference between Ole and Rangnick. Although I do think one thing he is doing better is he's making decisions and he's calling out players better.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can. Am I lagging slightly? Or can you hear me?
Yeah, it's lagging a bit, but I can hear you. You're good.
You can hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah.
Lagging a bit, right. No, I I think he's calling out players correctly. I'll quickly flip another question to you then while I get his connection sorted out. Speaking of getting better and slowly starting to get to grips with the job they're given, Jadon Sancho, he was probably our standout player yesterday. Do you think we're slowly starting to see the Jadon Sancho that we paid the 75 million for?
Yeah, slowly. With last few weeks, I would probably say he's been our best player the last 3 games. Still, the player I made previously, I still think he can do more off the ball. Which I again on that point, I do think that's across the board. I think everybody can do better off the ball, personally. But in terms of on the ball, yeah, we are starting to see a Jadon Sancho, which is a 70 million quid player. He's carrying the ball with intent. He's got an end product. Obviously, he's scored a couple of goals lately. Could have had 2, really. Where he'd gone through, yeah, he could have maybe slipped Ronaldo in, but to refer to him, he did really well to work the opening, and it's a good save from the goalie. But yeah, he now seems to have that bit where he can glide past a player rather than sprint past him. He doesn't need to sprint because he's just naturally quick, and he can, elegance and just glide past a player. We're starting to see more of that now. So yeah, I think, when you look at, say, Werner and Havertz, especially Havertz, for Chelsea, he took a season just to sort of bed into the Premier League, get that physicality up, and get up to speed, having come from the Bundesliga. I think Sancho's falling into that bracket. It was obviously very slow starting, but the last couple of games, we're seeing a lot more of the player that we want to see, which is a good thing. And I think if he can continue to improve week in, week out, and get this end products still performing, and he can just work on that out of possession side of his game, again, then yeah, I think next season we'll see the real Sancho, because I think we are starting to see glimpses of what he can do on a more regular basis, which I think is probably the big positive out of the last few games.
Yeah, and he looks like he's almost lost, almost like the shackles have come off slightly. He looked when he first came quite timid and quite scared to run at players, which is what he was famous for and why we paid the money for him at Dortmund, because he was so good at just darting at defenders. And I think yesterday, in the first half specifically, we saw that quite a lot. He was running at the Southampton fullbacks and causing them a lot of issues. And he was getting into spaces, which ultimately led to him getting his first Premier League goal, for Manchester United, which is great. Talking of moving forward in the Premier League, then in the midweek we have the rearranged game versus Brighton. This is a game that's supposed to happen, but I think was called off due to COVID, issues at the club. And we spoke about it, I think, last week on the podcast as well. So we'll briefly go over this. Brighton are a team that I think that have surprised a lot of clubs every single year since they've been up. They've got a fantastic manager in Graham Potter and play fantastic football. What do you expect going to Brighton in midweek? Because for me, on United's current form, Brighton would definitely fancy their chances, and I don't see why they don't feel like they can win this game. What do you expect from Brighton in midweek, Chris?
I think they're a side who are very tough to beat. I've just got the recent results up, and in the league, it's 4, 5, 6, 7 without defeat. The last defeat was 1-0 to Wolves. And before that, they were 3 unbeaten. And before that, I think, I think there's only the top couple of clubs who have actually lost more games, fewer games than Brighton. It's a lot of draws that have sort of meant that they are mid-table rather than possibly a bit higher. I think they've been a breath of fresh air, really, the way they play. Especially when they don't have any, players who you think are unbelievably talented. I think they've got a lot of good players. Obviously, they've got Bissouma and Lamptey, who I rate the pair of them very highly. But they don't have any, household names. But they play some beautiful football. Like I said, they're good defensively. I think Webster looks a really good centre half. Him and Dunk have formed a good partnership. Webster's even been touted as possibly making a charge for the England squad. which, to be fair, given the performances of a lot of English centre halves this season, might be a bit more possible than previously thought. But yeah, they're a good side. Keep the ball well. They're very similar to Southampton in the fact that they can press as well and move the ball quickly through the thirds. And I think with Basuma, as well as that linchpin in midfield, they could really hurt us if we are as open and as, maybe a harsh word to use, but lazy as we were against Southampton in terms of what we were doing off the ball. So we've got to make sure we don't give them an inch in midfield. Basuma's got the ability to drive through and create. Kukurea is a good outlet on the left, Lamptey on the right. They've got a lot going forward for them. They're just shy of centre forward, really, for me. Mope is good for sort of like a mid-range level. They want to make a step up. They need a proper 15, 20 goal striker. It's the only thing they're missing for me. So we've got to, we say every week, don't we? We've got to play better than we did the previous game. We don't. Again, I can see Brighton taking points. I really do. I think they've drawn twice with Chelsea in the last month or two. So yeah, they drew at Anfield as well, having come from 2-0 down. So yeah, they're going to be a threat again. And they, like you say, based on the form of the two sides, I think Brighton come into this game thinking, yeah, we can at least get something, if not all 3 points.
Yeah, and Graham Potter will think that as well. You know, he always knows how to set up his Brighton squad. How do you think Rangnick will set up to counter this Brighton side? Because this Brighton side plays some good football and they play some nice football. Do you think he'll change the team from Southampton at all?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think because obviously you've got. I think midfield is where I would imagine we make a change, but just looking, and I think Fred had COVID. I don't know whether he's going to be out of isolation and back sort of match ready. Matic is out with a shin injury as well, reading this. So I think, because to me, this game is actually one where two holding midfielders probably works better because it just condenses that midfield, because we were too open in the midfield against Southampton. That's where they hurt us. And then obviously with the wingers not tracking back, the wide areas for Brighton is where they're going to look to exploit with, like I say, Kukurea and Lamptey love bombing forward, and they have end product and a lot of pace as well. So our wingers need to be prepared to track them back. But I think it's that midfield. If it is the Pogba, Fernandes, McTominay trio, we know Pogba and Fernandes aren't great off the ball. I think Fernandes has got a better work rate than Pogba. But it's a lot of onus on McTominay to cover the ground and make sure that Basuma's not getting too much space to drive through. Lallana has not got too much space in the pocket to create. So I wouldn't be surprised if Fred was available. That I think he would start alongside McTominay and go for that sort of two sitting, and Bruno plays as a number 10. I think that's a change I would make if we have the player available. But if he's not available, I think he's going to have to go with the same team, really, because there's nobody else who can go into that area to beef up that midfield. We have to go with what we have, really, which I think leaves us susceptible.
Yeah, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I think Manchester United have actually missed Fred.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he provides a lot of balance to that midfield, and I think without him, I think we've realised that actually maybe, although it's not the best midfield in the world, it's what the best of what we've got is the best pairing with Scott McTominay and Fred. And I think Ollie was maybe criticised for picking them a lot because it wasn't necessarily the popular players, but I think actually now a lot of people are coming and realising that Ollie was right, and maybe that is our best two, because there's a reason that every manager picks Fred and not Van der Beek. I'm just saying, because every manager seems to pick him, and every manager seems to choose him over like someone like Donny. Obviously, I know Donny's not at the club now, so obviously you wouldn't be able to play in that midfield at the week. In midweek, but I think if Fred's available, I think he's got to start. Unfortunately, he did get COVID, which led to him being left out. But we'll look forward because after that, I'll preview this because I don't think we've got a podcast between now and next weekend. So the big one, well, I say the big one. For me, this fixture, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Manchester United play Leeds this weekend. And for me, Leeds United are like that annoying ex-girlfriend. They still think you love them and you care about them, and really you just don't care about them. And they're just there and they're nagging and they're constantly just trying to get attention. And now I think almost the way that it's going, why wouldn't they be like that? Because Manchester United are really struggling at the moment, and I mean, so are Leeds. They've got something to fight for, unlike Manchester United, which I think is maybe give them a cutting edge in this fixture at the weekend because they lost to Everton at the weekend, and now they really have something to fight for because they need points. They desperately need points to stay up to make sure they don't get sucked into that relegation battle. So yeah, I mean, how can you see that one going, Chris? Because I think for me, I see it going a similar way to the Brighton one.
Yeah, I agree. I think again, they're a team who likes to play football and move it quickly through the thirds. Similar to Brighton, similar to Southampton. I think ultimately those other two sides have done it more consistently and can defend better. I think that's with Leeds, you always feel as though you can score against them. But at the same time, they could easily score 3 or 4 themselves. I watched the game they played against Villa. I thought they were brilliant. I really did. And obviously, Dan James has got a point to prove. And he's playing as a number 9 as well, and he's thriving. He's been really good for them. I think whenever I've seen him play as a number 9, I think he's grown as a player. The first couple of times, obviously, he looked like a winger trying to play centre forward, but the last few, he's got a couple of goals against Villa as well. So, obviously, like Rafinha's a top player. I didn't think they were that bad against Everton. On another day, this Rodrigo scores 2 worldies. He's an inch away on both occasions in the bar. So they're a threat. We know that, and the fact that this is going to be played in front of a crowd, because I think the last time we went there it was behind closed doors. So this is probably the game Leeds have looked for, isn't it? As the Leeds fans have looked for as the one they want to be at. It's a huge game for them in a normal situation. It's a big game, the rivalry, but the fact that they are down there now, seemingly every week, just getting dragged a little bit closer. It could be a great atmosphere and an intimidating one. And I don't know how many of this United team can stand up to an atmosphere what's going to be created there. Because for example, when we played Newcastle, similar sort of atmosphere, big support for Newcastle in that game, and we seemed to really struggle for large parts. I think it's going to be similar in that regards. Got to stand up to it, and we've got to show character, especially in that game, and want to fight for everything, because Leeds are going to fight for everything. We know that. So I think it's 2 games that any other season you would go United bankers, but I think both of them are really, really tough games for different reasons. And yeah, it's another one you could see us dropping points again, really do. But hopefully not. We know the quality is there in the team. If we can just sort out ourselves without the ball, then we should win both games. But purely based on what we've seen in the last three matches, both could go the wrong way again in terms of us dropping points. So yeah, we'll see, boys. Again, I'm looking forward to that one. I'm looking forward to both. I think they're both entertaining games. That Leeds one especially.
Yeah, and like you say, it's our first time playing at Ellen Road with a full crowd as well. And it is essentially their cup final. Not to disrespect Leeds fans, or if there's anyone, this is their cup final. They don't. It's very rare that. Well, I don't think they've. When was the last time we've been at Ellen Road with fans? I couldn't tell you. It's
might well have been the Premier League the last time they were in it.
Cup was twice at our place, wasn't it, that we played
Yeah.
them?
Yeah, so it'd be 2004 they got
Yeah,
relegated.
it's a long, long time since we've been to Ellen Road, and especially given the fragile nature of this squad at the moment, like you say, I don't know if they'll be able to handle the atmosphere, but we'll see. Hopefully, it might spur them on, but it's going to be very moody in that stadium. I think if it doesn't go United's way, and I really hope we don't lose because we'll be hearing songs about it for the next 14 years because that's all we've heard. January 3rd, remember the day, that's all we've heard. So we'll see. I mean, they'll keep going on and they won't go away if we do lose there. So, I mean, I'd be happy with another. I remember last time we went there last season with no crowd and it was probably the most boring game I've ever watched in my life, that 0-0. But I would much rather that than them winning 1-0. Or them win at all. I would much rather see a much. I can't believe I'm saying that. I'd much rather see us draw than set up for a draw and not lose. But I know we'll see. I'm going to bring in a new little segment here when we finish talking about everything, Chris. Where I'm going to do a bit of score predictions because I feel like that's something we don't do, and it might be nice just to add in there at the end of the podcast. And people, if they are watching, might be to leave their score predictions below as well. So we'll go with Brighton first. What is your score prediction for Brighton? Bear in mind it is at Brighton's United away from home this time. What would your prediction be?
I think given the fact that every last 3 games have been 1-1, it'd be rude not go 1-1, wouldn't it? Really?
Yeah, well,
that's
what I mean.
Brighton draws so many games as well, and he's usually 1-1. So I think, if I was a betting man, I'd put a fiver on 1-1.
Do you know what? I think we'll nick that one. I think we'll nick it 2-0. I think that could be the game that we, going into the Leeds game, we'll go a bit head higher, and we'll go in a bit better form. What about the Leeds game? What do you think that's going to end up like?
Sort of heart and head, isn't it? My heart's saying that's going to be the one where we turn on the style. We seem to score a lot of goals against Leeds. We'll go 4-0, but then I'm also thinking, yeah, they're going to do us.
Yeah.
So we'll play safe and go for another draw. But high scoring. I think high scoring. I think 2-2, but would not be surprised if one of us nicked it 3-2. But we'll go 2-2.
I remember when United played Liverpool, and I said I could see us getting beat here, and I could see it being embarrassing. And I went, do you know what? I'll say 3-0 Liverpool because I thought that's a doomsday bet. It can't go worse than that. And it went worse than that. So I think for this one, I can actually see us losing. It pains me to say, but I can see Leeds turning us over, especially given the way they'll be up for it. I'm going to go with a 3-1 Leeds. Now, that
I mean, to be fair, I think this is one of those hard games because you don't know which United's going to turn up. You don't know what Leeds are going to turn up. It could be absolutely anything.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. And so I'm going to go with a 3-1 Leeds United. And that absolutely pains me to say, but I'm doing that to say, if they win, I told you so. If we don't, well, we won. So who cares?
Exactly.
So it's a doomsday bet. Right, Chris, thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure. We'll wrap it up there. We'll be back this time probably next week, actually. I think we're keeping this Sunday evening slot now, I think, unless obviously there's something that needs to be talked about drastically in midweek. I think we'll be keeping this Sunday evening slot, which is good. If you haven't already, make sure you check out all the content on Manchester TV. Not just Manchester TV, but they do many other local channels. You've got one for your local area. You should go have a look, go do research. There's one like Leeds, Birmingham. There's many channels. They don't just put football content out there as well. They put news content on the Twitter, on the Facebook, on the YouTube. So make sure you go check all that out. And Chris, thank you for joining me as per usual. Worries. It's been a pleasure. We will see you all next week when Manchester United have beaten Brighton and been smashed by Leeds at Ellen Road. And we're here discussing another fun week of Manchester United football. We will see you next time. Good